Hello, welcome back to Being Black with Camille Smith, and today we are welcoming Alexis Cheatham. Alexis goes to the University of Houston and plays volleyball on the volleyball team there. She is majoring in technology, leadership, and innovative management, and during her time in college, she's organized a small phone banking campaign on behalf of getting justice for Elijah McClain, Jacob Blake, and Breonna Taylor, vowing to Venmo the first 25 people to call. She spearheaded a social justice march with the help of other student athletes in the University of Houston Athletic Department, and she helped set up an official polling site at the football stadium to ensure students were able to access the polls, which is awesome because getting students to vote is so incredibly important. So thank you for that. I'm super excited to be talking to Alexis today because she is friends with Freddie. If you haven't watched his video is on being Black and unlearning whitewashed history. So go back and watch that if you haven't. And he connected me with Alexis, and after stalking her Instagram and seeing how cool she was, now she's an actual guest. So Alexis, without further ado, what does being Black mean to you?
Being Black and code switching means to me, quote unquote, a language or languages that Black people or even like other minorities use depending on the audience.
And when did you first find out that you were Black?
It really didn't hit me until I was probably like in elementary school. And it's when you first start liking, boys, obviously, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I think he's so cute. And obviously I went to predominantly white school, right? And so I like have all these crushes and like they don't like me back. And I'm like, okay, like what's going on? And I understood, I was like, okay, it's, because I'm Black. So that's when I, understood that part.
Okay. And then how was it actually growing up in your area?
It was a little difficult only because you have to pick and choose your battles, right? So I would hear, different like racial slurs or just, different jokes about Black people, and I'd have to laugh it off with them, even though deep down I was like really upset. But, it definitely gave me perspective, just helped my younger sister, to tell her like, okay, don't put up with that. Like, I wish I knew not to put up with certain things. So now I can say that to other younger Black girls and, other Black women who have been through the same thing.
And then when you went to the University of Houston, how did that change? How did your relationship with your Blackness change at all, or did it?
180, girl. Complete 180. Because one, I didn't realize how many different like just ethnicities and just, a bunch of like minorities of Black people that were at the University of Houston. And then you started getting into like Black sororities and Black fraternities. And I went to my first probate and I was like, oh my gosh, this is all so cool and all that stuff. And I was like, just being Black is just so awesome, especially like I said before, you find people who have the same experiences as you. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, okay, we're in this together now. Like we have each other now. So it's really cool.
And then do you have any advice for your younger self?
I would say that trials are definitely going to come, but it's the condition that the trial finds you in that makes you who you are. So.
Word. So put together. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I really, really like that. But anyway, I am super excited to be talking to Alexis about being Black and code switching. This is like a topic that, if I'm going to be honest, I didn't even really know what code switching was because I also grew up in a predominantly white area, and like K through 12, I was like one of maybe 3 Black kids in like classes of like 500 people. So like I was like very used to being the only Black person in a room,
right?
Black woman and Black person just in general. So I was code switching and I didn't even know. And it wasn't until college that I think I learned in a class like what the actual term was, and I was like, oh, like everyone else doesn't do that. Like, what do you mean? And it almost like became such like a way of life for me, just like how I communicated with people. So, Alexis, how would you define code switching?
I would define it as like a way that we as Black people interact with other Black people or even different races of people, for sure.
And like, I think that's also important too, because you can code switch with Black people as well. I think that's something that people don't realize is like we always talk about AAVE or African American vernacular. Um,
Yes,
don't get me wrong, like a lot of people know like similar slang terms or like there's like certain aspects of like Black culture that like a lot of Black people will know about, like things like that. But I do find that I do also code switch depending on the Black person that I'm interacting with and like maybe like where they're from or like certain slang words that they use on a regular basis. But do you think that code switching actually detracts from like who you are authentically or who you view yourself to be?
I think that I don't think it deters from who you are authentically. If anything, I think, and this sounds like kind of weird, I think it just displays how much of a range you have as a person and kind of how well you can, how personable you can be, really, with different people. Um, because I mean, obviously, if you're talking to your best friend, right, in a certain way, it's like I understand I can approach the CEO of a big company, like I have to have a different tone and demeanor about myself, so just kind of shows how personal a person can be and how versatile they are.
Yeah, and I think so too. I think um, the beautiful thing about like communicating with other people, like there's literally an entire major at universities, like communication major. Like communication is so incredibly important, and you can study rhetoric and tone, like you said, and like there's like public speaking classes, like how you should breathe while you speak, like how you interact with people. I don't think that you should interact with every person the same.
Exactly.
Because that just in my head just really wouldn't make much sense because the example that you use, like I wouldn't speak to my best friend the same way that I would speak to my parents, or I wouldn't speak to my parents the same way that I would speak to my sister. um, but I do think that something that I realized after, getting this or getting this vocabulary surrounding what code switching was, that I think it can kind of double as a coping mechanism. And I
Mhm.
think when I was growing up, it was kind of detracting from who I was as a person because I didn't feel comfortable in a lot of spaces that I was in, which is why like I then code switched. So I think that there has to be like a balance between code switching because like that's how you that's how you communicate, that's kind of how you like get through the world, but then also acknowledging, am I code switching just because I feel that this is the best way to communicate with them, or am I code switching to make them feel more comfortable and actively making myself uncomfortable? Because I realized growing up like I was very uncomfortable in a lot of a lot
Yeah.
of the spaces that I was in, which is so unfortunate to say now, but like I can laugh about it. But do you think that you've ever been in situations that you code switched just for the comfort of other people?
Oh my gosh. Actually, Camille, I'm so glad you brought that up because, and actually, I correct that last piece. I think that code switching definitely it's a part of who you are, yes, but I don't know if it's like the realest, rawest part of the person as you are, because there have definitely been times where I felt uncomfortable to be myself or the way I wanted to actually say things, and I would have to like correct myself, like as you said, if I went to, for example, like one of my white teammates' house, right, and I was meeting their parents, I would have to speak like different, like obviously like more like I mean obviously like educated. I don't want to say educated because like
Mhm.
I hated when people were like, "Oh, you don't talk black, right?" And I was for the longest time I thought that was such a compliment. I was like, "Oh, thank you so much," because growing up, you don't know that like that's rude, that's low key racist. You know what I'm saying? You don't know. Um, and now it's just like no, I just talk well, like and a lot of people were surprised. Like I remember one person's parent was like, "Oh my gosh, you talk so well." And I was like, "Oh, well, thank you." And it's like I had to do that because like I wanted them to feel like their daughter was safe hanging out with me. Like, oh, she's okay to be around. She's not, considered ghetto or hood like other black people they might have encountered. Especially because growing up, as you can kind of understand too, um, people already have this like stereotype in your head of like when you're gonna open your mouth, like it's gonna be just not understanding you. So when you do, it's like I
Mhm.
want to kind of defeat this stereotype, but it's like it's weird because you're a child. Like, why are you a child? Like why am I a child trying to kind of present myself in the best way possible, and I can't just be a child and just say what I want to do? Because my friends are gonna not change who they are whenever they meet my parents.
And it's almost like Black people in general have to almost prove themselves even before like communicating whatever they wanted to communicate in the first place. And I like really do remember people always commenting, even in college too, oh, like, Camille, you're so articulate. And don't get me wrong, I very much am. But
Period.
when you realize that it's coming from a place of they were expecting that I wouldn't be, like that's where like the disconnect is, and like that's where the problem is. Because as a kid, like very similar, like my professors would be like, oh, like you're like you speak so well, Camille, like da da da, and like I was like, yeah, like thanks, like I appreciate that. But again, like as a kid, you don't really realize like where that negativity is coming from. But then on the flip side, again, I grew up around predominantly white people, and my parents also were just very interested in like me speaking a certain way. Like they wanted to ensure that they would like speak, like I knew slang, but like they just wanted to ensure that I knew like the correct way to say things.
Right.
And I do think right now, like when I like think about how I speak, like I use certain like slang words, I'll say, but like I don't normally use them. Like it really, really depends on who I'm with.
Right.
But when I came to college, I had the confusing like disconnect of black people that I had met like my freshman year saying that I spoke white. And I don't know if like you've ever experienced that or like been kind of confused by that too, but that was like a huge issue for me my freshman year.
It definitely was an issue, especially just in high school because I have an older brother as well. So whenever I'd get around him and his friends and I would talk, they'd hear me talk around like my white friends who, were girls, and like we'd all be over and stuff like that. And like they would leave like, oh my gosh, like why do you talk like that? Like why do you talk like a white girl? And it would be so frustrating because I'm like, okay, I now then feel double, subconscious, I'm saying, like self-conscious about how I'm talking around black people now when I'm, supposed to feel like I can just talk to you naturally, or, I don't have to worry about like what you're going to think about how I'm speaking as well. So then whenever the two would come together, like when I was with my brother's friends and like with my friends, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, should I even speak? Like, should I even talk? I'm like, should I even talk? Like, what do I do? But it is just so frustrating, especially like within the Black community. It's just like, we have to, I just wish there was more of like a cohesiveness to, not deteriorating other Black people who just know like to speak like articulate, who know to speak well, it's just because it gets that, I mean, like you said, you understand too. It's like that middle kind of like that internal battle you're feeling like, okay, what do I say to who and how do I say it? I thought I could say this to a Black person, but I can't, and they feel this type of way about it. So it definitely was kind of confusing.
But I distinctly remember my freshman year, and freshman year is so incredibly uncomfortable just as it is. I had met so many more Black people than I was used to even being around. And I hadn't really thought about code switching because similar to how you mentioned before, like, oh, when you're around Black people, like I should be able to speak however I feel. Like these are the people that I should feel, more comfortable with. And the guy that was there was like, oh yeah, like I don't know if I can like it was profanity, but like I don't really know if I can like mess with you like as like a person because like you like speak really white and like I don't know like how I feel about that. And like initially it was like an immediate feeling of just like being uncomfortable because I was like, okay, what am I supposed to respond to that? Like what am I supposed to say? But then like something came over to me and I was like, why do you feel that I speak white? Like, what does that mean to you? Like, oh, like you like speak really proper, like you speak really like articulately, like whatever. And I was like, but why are you attributing those things to being white? Like, why is that solely a white trait? And
Right.
he like was just kind of looking at me like stunned. And I was like, if you're gonna continue to perpetuate, or if you're gonna continue to make me feel uncomfortable by the way that I speak because I'm articulate, and then you're going to attribute that only to white people, that's only a white trait that you can have, then you're just perpetuating the stereotype of Black people being stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was like very like, oh, like Black empowerment, like Black people are great, like, and like they are. But I was like, that right there, making other Black people feel uncomfortable because of the way that they speak, you're not, doing what like you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And I think after that, period, because like that had happened with like a lot of other people, a lot of Black people before then, and a lot of Black people after that. But I was like, asking that question, like, why do we attribute being intelligent or speaking a certain way to only being white? And like, I can see why it's so weird, because in my head, like, I can understand what he meant, because he was like, oh, like, based on where you grew up, based on the way that you speak, because like where you grew up is very much influences how you speak to other people. He didn't know if he could, be friends with me. And like I was like, okay, but like still, you can just not be friends with me because you don't want to be friends with me. But I don't think that the sole reason that you shouldn't be friends with me is because of the way that I speak to you. And I'm not using like certain words um, that make you feel more comfortable. Um, but yeah, that was just like one personal anecdote that I think is like really important, because people rarely think that people always think about code switching as it relates to a minority being put into a white space, but a lot of times a lot of minorities have to code switch to be comfortable
Mhm.
in their own spaces. Um,
Yes.
so I don't know if you relate to that in any means.
I definitely do. Actually, it reminded me of this one scene in Dear White People, and she's like walking down the street, and she's like listening to some like music, like it's kind of like some rap music or whatever around like black people, and then she like switches it over to like some like pop or like country music whenever she sees white people, and keeps like switching it back and forth. And that just is such like a good like, kind of like example of kind of how it is whenever you're around like certain people, not just with music, but like with your words. I mean, music is a totally different concept, when you have certain people in the car, like what you play and things like that. But, and I mean, it does. I remember one time I got back from an event and I was talking to one of my teammates, and, we're just talking however we wanted to talk. And one of the head people calls me, and I pick up the phone, and, I started talking, more articulate, and she started, everyone has their phones out, and she started Snapchatting me. She's like, "Uh-oh, corporate Lex is back." And it was just like, that's just like how it is, like, right? No, it's funny. It just shows like, and mind you, I was talking to another black person on the phone,
Mhm.
right? But it just goes to show that like, depending on, who you're around, and like who you're with, you switch it. Because mind you, if the person who I was talking with on the phone was there, I would have been talking, articulately the whole time, right?
Mhm.
But because, my teammate was there, I could talk however I wanted. And it kind of honestly weighs like in your conscious, like, okay, am I weighing who this person is over who this person is? So that's going to determine how I talk, like to make whichever person or party I'm with like comfortable, which is what I've had to like really come to terms with in myself. I'm like, okay, is me talking like this because I view their opinion of me more than this person's opinion of me, or because I know this person's opinion of me isn't going to change no matter how I talk, but this person will, so I need to like come correct, type of
Mhm.
situation.
And that too, sometimes I find that like in that type of situation, like when I'm around, like let's say my boss versus like a coworker that like I feel really comfortable with, and I would choose to speak, you know, quote unquote as articulately as like I can, um, not even necessarily to make them feel more comfortable, but to make me feel more comfortable, because I know that when I present myself and I speak a certain way, that in most scenarios, like they won't like question it, if that makes sense. And I think
Right.
also is another scenario when it's like, am I being my full authentic self? Like, am I, it's like backwards. Like, I'm doing something to make someone else feel more comfortable, but like now I feel more comfortable doing that something that makes them feel more comfortable.
Right.
Like, we can all kind of leave the interaction and like not think about it anymore.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, definitely. And it kind of comes down to like people pleasing almost. It's kind of just like, okay, am I like pleasing you? Like, was I pleasing enough to you? Or was the conversation like, we can go back and just be like, oh my gosh, like I'm very impressed, by her, like, and the way she talked. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like I said, that just inward, like, turmoil, just kind of like, okay, what's going on here? Like, am I feeling like I need their approval of how I talk, or a person of authority? Because, there's that quote, it's like, treat the janitor the same way you treat, the CEO type of situation. And so just kind of like that. It's like, okay, should I talk to everyone this type of way? But like you said, you have different relationships with different people. And I totally agree. Like, you can't approach um, every person, you know, the same way you do. It's just not how it works, you know, because
Mhm.
everyone is different. Everyone kind of has their guard up. Everyone has their, you know, already their kind of biases that you already know of that you
Mhm.
have to break down.
So do you like what spaces can you think of that you code switch in the most?
Okay, definitely the classroom. If I have a question or if I were in a group project, I definitely it's every proper noun that you can think of, every conjunction. Like I'm saying it, I'm saying it all correct.
Definitely presentation. Like I like almost feel like sometimes I like speak with commas. Like I'm like really trying to like make sure everyone understands every word that I'm saying. Um, Definitely there, like now that I work, like definitely at work, small talking all the time. And it's funny too because I work from home now, so like I can like really work from virtually anywhere. And I was working around one of my friends, and I was like, I had a meeting, and I like had to talk in it, so I was like talking, da, 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 da. And then like I like ended like the Zoom call basically, and I was like,
It's exhausting.
he
It
was
can
like, what? And I was like, I don't know, like I think code switching sometimes can just be very emotionally exhausting because you're like you're thinking about literally everything that you're saying, how
trying to say it right. Hmm.
yes, smiling, like depending
Yeah,
on who it is, and like it really can be like very, very emotionally exhausting. So I do find that I code switch the most in academic settings, like you said, and like presentations or like now like at work for me. But when do you code switch the least?
definitely around my family.
Yeah.
It's just it's what it is. Like we're gonna say what we're gonna say. I'm gonna say how I feel about it. And I wish like, you know, it was like that just for every black child like growing up, because even sometimes in their own families, like I said, even there were moments with my brother when, you know, I mean, obviously he didn't say it, like his friend just like, oh my gosh, Lex, what are you doing? But,
Mhm.
you know, even there are some moments within families that, you know, kids sometimes feel like they have to talk a certain way to their, you know, families, you know, when they come home versus when they go to school. But yeah, definitely the least around my family and just like my close friends. Yeah.
Yeah, my family for sure. And specifically my sister Jasmine, because we just be we just be talking about
Yeah.
literally anything. And like I feel very comfortable just like speaking to her. Like it's a very um like we have thought-provoking conversations, but like I don't have to think a lot when I'm speaking to her. Like I genuinely can just like it's a streamline of consciousness as opposed to oh, should I phrase it this way? Should I like use
Yeah.
this word or whatever the case may be? I think that's why I enjoy spending the most time with her. I feel the most comfortable with her because I don't have that extra layer of like thinking. If that
Right.
makes sense.
No, and I was gonna actually agree with you because it's like you can really relay your true emotions or like how you're really feeling about that certain thing. And you don't have to like, I guess like patent it, because even sometimes like when I feel like I'm, you know, not code switching like as much, there's still like a surface level, there's like a pattern of like, okay, I still didn't really say what I wanted to say or say how I felt, you know, but you still thought I was like, you know, it was so comfortable. And it's quite funny because sometimes I feel like white people think you're just hilarious when you talk, you know, I guess like, you know, like hood, you know what I'm saying, hood or get it. They just think you're the funniest person like ever in the world. So it's just like
I saw a video, maybe it was a post, I don't know what it was, but it basically was talking about how a lot of white people use like black vernacular like as a joke. Like they'll like say it because they feel it's funny. And they were basically comparing it to how before like white people would dress up as black people because they thought it was funny.
no, literally, yeah.
Oh, like that, doesn't make me feel good. And I do feel like sometimes it does make me uncomfortable in certain situations when people that I'm around, like white people that I am around, use certain slang words that like I don't even use, but like I know that they're using them because they're around me. Like
Right.
I'm like from like the Philadelphia area and like people say John here. And you'll never catch me saying like that's just not
Yeah, who you
I just wouldn't use it. I know if someone uses it in a sentence like, oh, like I understand what they're saying, but like I'm not from Philadelphia, therefore I don't claim, like their slang. But like some people specifically a lot of the white people that I went to school with feel very comfortable just like picking up words that like they don't understand or like even know how to use in a sentence. So like I don't know if you have a Twitter, but like I saw a tweet recently, like people say like child, like woo child. And people thought that that word, like people spell it like Chile. I'll put it like in the video, it'll pop up. And they thought it was Chile.
Yes, I saw a video. They said, what does wow Chile mean?
So, so I'm like, y'all been using this phrase, y'all been using this word, and it doesn't even make sense in what you're tweeting. Like, why I don't know. Why would you
just don't even, if you're not even sure about it, don't even
don't use it. Like don't, or ask somebody, I guess, but like
right?
just don't use it.
Yeah. It's just a no from me. It's a no for me. It's a no.
And again, those tweets, like I can laugh like about it like after the fact because like people are like flaming them and they're like roasting them and it's fine and like ha ha he he. But it's like when you really think about it, people feel comfortable picking up slang or using slang simply because A, they think it's funny when like realistically that's just like a way a lot of people speak, like a group of people speaks. And B, they don't understand it. Like even like there was one celebrity, I think it was like Miley Cyrus's like younger sister like used the word nappy, but like not in the way that it's meant. And everyone was like, what? Like, why would you say that?
That and Black Twitter is so quick. So
quick. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, so fast.
And they should be because like
no, you cannot hide anything. No, you better come correct expeditiously because they will find you and embarrass you in the whole everyone will know. Okay. It's not gonna be a little thing.
I don't know. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, like they really dragging that person. But like sometimes it's like y'all low-key deserve
right.
And you know, peep that. So even I'm like getting more comfortable with you throughout the conversation and like I'm changing how I'm speaking. And I didn't even wow, would you look at that? Code switching.
And look at that.
Yes. And on that note, Alexis, is there anything else that you want the audience to know?
No, other than, you know, just at the end of the day, make yourself comfortable. Don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, yes, you know, be wise. You know, there has to be wisdom in everything. But at the end of the day, like make yourself comfortable, but also cater to yourself, you know, because like you said, it is emotionally exhausting. And just give yourself the love and care that you know you need to have. And if there are people around you, like your family or close friends that, you know, have an issue with what they're speaking, like really just like talk to them, but don't change for them. Okay. And yeah, I'll leave it with that.
That's it.
JT said, period. And I thought Mary had a little lamb. Okay, let me stop.
You were not to get that, and that's fine. But I'm very, very happy that I was able to talk with you. I'm super excited that I have a new friend.
Yes, thank you. Oh, like Camille, you do not understand. Like this is so powerful what you're doing. This is ridiculous. Like so cool, so cool.
Thank you, thank you. For those that are, thank you so much for tuning into this video, and come back next week for another one. Alexis, thank you again, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.